What's going on, Lego Maniacs? It's Ty, the Lego guy here, and welcome to another Lego Star Wars comparison. Today we're actually taking a look at every single minifigure scale TIE Fighter Legos ever produced, spanning all the way from 2001 up into 2021 and everything in between. Can't wait to get into this. This has actually been a little difficult to, kind of acquire all these, but now that I have them all, I'm gonna compare them for you guys. It's kind of interesting to see how Lego's changed over, 20 years, but enough talk, let's get right into it. And here we have the very first TIE Fighter made by Lego. It's the 7146. It had 171 pieces, 2 minifigs, came out in 2001, and it retailed for $20 US. So as you can see, it's pretty basic, but you can tell what it is, and I don't believe blue is actually a bad color. If you look at episode 4, it actually looks like it's somewhat like a sand blue, and the design of it's actually pretty well done. I mean, check out those wings, the Imperial logo, and the cockpit actually is quite nice as well. You can actually very easily access it to reveal the interior. I'll show you guys that a little bit closer. It is using that old school control panel piece, which is actually kind of interesting. I swear, half the Lego Star Wars sets back from the early 2000s, late 90s had it, and it closes up very easily like so. Nice printed little piece on the top, and what's nice about it as well is it includes a stand, and it's one of the few TIE Fighters, actually it's the only TIE Fighter for at least the standard TIEs that actually ever included one. Overall, pretty decent set, pretty basic. You get some OG looking Lego Star Wars minifigs. Overall, pretty great set. Let's now move on to the next. And now we've come to the very next TIE Fighter made by Lego. It's the 7263. It had 159 pieces, 2 minifigs, came out in 2005, and it retailed for $20 US. Now, it is quite similar to the last one. There isn't huge differences between the two. If it's not broke, don't fix it, and that's definitely the type of idea they went with this. One thing I will say is the wings actually look a little bit more angled by adding those little black pieces, so little improvement right there. I'll actually give you guys a little bit closer look. Again, same printing on the top, same cockpit, and very easily... Okay, this is one thing, this is actually good. We're keeping this in the review. This is one thing that's actually kind of inferior. These pieces tend to come off a lot. So they actually have to be really stuck in there, but it does tend to come loose, as you guys saw, unfortunately. It actually did it once more after I put it right together. So anyways, that is definitely fragile, definitely knock on this TIE Fighter, whereas the other one I didn't notice it has that problem. Again, same little control panel. Overall, pretty decent TIE, but it may be the most fragile of the lot. What I love about this set though is it includes my favorite minifig out of all these TIEs, and that is none other than the light up Darth Vader. This guy is just incredible. If you guys want individual reviews of all these sets, I actually have them. You guys can kind of see it turns red, but for now we're just going to briefly go over the minifigs. Again, that's my favorite Vader. Probably my favorite Darth Vader they've ever made. Overall, pretty great set. Awesome minifigs, just a little fragile. Let's now move on to the 2012. And now we've come to the next TIE Fighter. It's the 9492. It had 413 pieces, 4 minifigs, retailed for $55 US, and it came out in 2012. Now I absolutely love the wing detail on this TIE. Obviously, it is much larger than the 2005 and the 2001. Quite a bit of greebling as well. Just overall, the design is so good on this one. And this is actually, in my opinion, the better sized TIE Fighter. I do believe it is a little oversized. I think the perfect TIE is somewhere between this one and the 2005 version. But overall, very nicely detailed. For play functions, it doesn't have a whole lot. It has some flick fire missiles on the bottom. We all know how those kind of work. You can very easily open up the cockpit It's not gonna fly anywhere like the 2005. Give you guys a little bit better view of the interior though. It doesn't have a computer piece, which was a little bit of a knock for this tie. I do wish it actually had, I wish it had one. I mean, the little red piece is not all that great, but it's not the end of the world. What is nice about it though is it can very easily just close up like so, and you get a nice slew of minifigs. Let's now move on to the 2015. And here we have the First Order Special Forces TIE Fighter. It has the longest name of them all. I was debating on whether putting this in it, but this does show how the TIE Fighter has progressed, and it's actually a pretty awesome model. Main key difference between this one and the last one is basically the wings. You'll notice they're gray and black, not black and gray, you know, with the predominant color being gray instead of black. But what's really interesting about it is the windows also changed when they made this one, and it actually has an area to stick 2 pilots. So you have the back little cockpit right there, as well as the front. And it's the only TIE fighter that actually does this in this entire collection, or it's actually probably the only TIE fighter Legos ever made that has an area for 2 pilots. That's how it kind of works. It's nice and snug in there. Give you guys a little bit better view, but as you can see, it can very easily just fit 2 pilots. It's nice and snug again, but I do quite like it. I do like the idea that there's 2, kind of like a gunner and a pilot. As you can see, it also has a little rocket launcher on the top right here, so this TIE fighter definitely is packing a little bit more of a punch. Might need more pilots because of it, and it has spring-loaded shooters, just if in case you guys were wondering. They got rid of the flick-fire missile, which I was perfectly okay with that. I actually prefer the spring-loaded shooters a little bit more. And you also get an interesting slew of minifigs. This is the only TIE fighter of the standard TIE family that gives you 2 pilots, so kind of interesting. Let's now move on to the 2018. And now we've come to the best designed TIE fighter in my opinion. It's the 75211. It had 519 pieces, 4 minifigs, came out again in 2018, and it retailed for $70 US. This one is just, it's as close to perfection as I think you can get a minifig scale TIE fighter. It just reminds me of a basically a mini UCS TIE. The detail on it is just so well done. Again, I think that at this scale it is a little oversized, but nothing too crazy. It's maybe, I don't know, an inch or about 3 centimeters too tall. Overall though, it really captures the look correctly. You also get a number of nice minifigs. Again, they're keeping with that traditional windshield that we saw from the 2015, and you can very easily open it up like so to reveal the cockpit. Just give you guys a little bit closer look of the interior. I actually like the driving mechanism that they have on this. I think that actually looks pretty awesome. And again, it has the spring-loaded shooters, just like the 2015, but unlike that one, this one's actually in the correct color scheme as I kill the TIE pilot. I also love the minifigs in this set. You get a Mimban Stormtrooper, which actually makes this set quite valuable. Besides it being a very good TIE, you get a number of actually somewhat rare minifigs. Let's now move on to the final TIE. And here we have it. It is definitely quite a bit smaller than the last TIE we just took a look at. It's the 75300. It has 492 pieces, 3 minifigs, came out again in 2021, and it retails for only $40 US. So that's part of the reason why this TIE is actually desirable, is just because you can make a fleet of these quite just a lot more easily than maybe the last one, considering it's $70 US. This one's basically about almost half the price. So it's good in that respect. Obviously, it's not as detailed, but it still has some nice greebling on the sides, and you actually get a number of pretty awesome minifigs, especially that droid. He's somewhat rare, and you never can go wrong with a Stormtrooper or a TIE pilot. To access the interior, it's actually quite similar to the 2018. And believe it or not, this one I actually think has the best controls. It has some little joysticks, and does doesn't have a computer piece, which they could actually fit in there. That's kind of a knock, but overall pretty decent. It's also the only tie that actually gets the spring-loaded shooters correct, putting them in green. Overall, pretty decent looking fighter. I don't think it deserves all the hate it gets, but it's definitely smaller than the 2018, and I don't think it is quite as good, but it's a lot easier to amass a number of these. Let's actually now compare all the 6 TIE fighters side by side and see how Lego's kind of changed over the years. And here we have all 6 of them side by side. Kind of crazy to see all the differences between, you know, what 20 years makes, right? But over here we have the 2001 and the 2004, basically identical. There wasn't a whole lot of change between these two. Main difference is they kind of have these little angled black pieces jutting out on the 2004, but overall it's basically the same tie. In 2012, this is where we really started to see the difference, and this scale would basically continue for the next 6 years. Main key difference with this one is it has sort of a half circle dome, basically, like it juts out, whereas in the newer ones, you know, they start giving you a flat window piece, which I think is actually a little bit more accurate, although I really do like this 2012 version. 2015 again is just a little bit more of an improvement over it. And then in 2018 is really where I think they perfected the tie. It looks amazing. Main problem with it is it actually has, its spring-loaded shooters should be green, not red, which is kind of funny. They kept that throughout all the 5 previous versions, but they only figured that out in the 2021 one. This one definitely is a little bit a step down. It's not terrible though. It's nice to be able to have a number of ties for a cheap price, considering they only go for about 40 US. And what's interesting about it is they kind of returned to the older scale TIE fighter. These are basically identical. Like, the older ones are maybe half an inch or, you know, maybe like 1.5 centimeters taller. They're essentially the same size, which is kind of crazy. So they went with this from 2012 to 2018, and then they reverted back to the smaller scale TIE fighter. Not the end of the world, but people saying that it is the smallest, that's actually not true. They're just kind of returning back to the 2004 way of doing things. Anyways, that pretty well does all the ties as far as, you know, comparing them. Let's now get into the end of the comparison and get my final thoughts. Well guys, that was my comparison. Do hope you enjoyed it. Honestly, all these sets have their positives and their negatives. I love the OG TIE fighters. I just think that they have that classic blue, and it gives me so much nostalgia. I also love, again, the light up lightsaber for Vader. He's probably my favorite minifigure out of this entire lot. And obviously the modern ones that we've got have been very good. In 2012, they really started to make a big change. And in 2015 is when I really think they perfected the TIE fighter. And then the 2018, it's my favorite of them all. Again, the newest one's actually not terrible. It's actually returning back to kind of the old style TIE fighter as far as size goes, because it's basically identical in size. Personally, again, I like them all, but I have to say I think that the 2018 takes the cake. I just think it looks like a mini scale UCS TIE fighter. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this and maybe which one's your favorite. It is very interesting again to see how Lego's kind of changed over, you know, 20 years. But yeah, that pretty well does the comparison. But if you liked it, leave it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, definitely consider subscribing and click that bell so you're notified for any future comparison videos that we do. We do basically 1 or 2 a month, and I enjoy doing them quite a bit. It's really interesting to see the changes and how Lego is kind of progressing. But yeah, that's all I got for you again. But thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.